just a stupid bot. All right, go live. All right. Apparently, our voices and the zero amount of music that's on this channel is copyrighted by somebody. I would like to show. If you believe this, I love this one. If you believe this is a mistake, we'd like to hear from you. To appeal this removal, please submit this form. Let's see
Unbelievable.
what this form says. We're live again, by the way, so you can go right ahead.
Can you stitch these together in some way, or is it just basically it goes away?
I'm not even bothering.
Yeah.
Psycho 216. Yes, it is very
Nice.
much. All right, we're gonna have to call. Let's just call bicycles cars or something. Apparently, bicycles are. I don't. Maybe it's because maybe it's like hitting me with the copyright for the Queen song. Is it the Queen that did that? I want to ride my bicycle. I want
Yeah,
to
that's right.
ride my
That's
bike. Maybe one of
whenever
us sounds exactly like Freddie Mercury or whoever the
it's
fuck sang that
possible.
damn song.
My kid definitely sings that song whenever he's
No,
pissed at me.
it's Pink Floyd. It's Pink Floyd.
No, it's Queen.
Oh,
It's
is it?
definitely Queen. Yeah.
Which one am I
And
thinking?
now that we said that, we're kicked off of the stream, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. Give it about 30
Jesus.
seconds.
Yep.
All right. Well, where we left off, this guy does this thing that people don't like the bikes. We don't like bicycles. There it is. We don't like bikes.
Why'd you say the word? No.
I can't help it. I'm not good at. I'm not a dishonest person. It's hard for me to.
Should we call them two wheelers?
Yes, two wheelers. There we go.
Nice.
Not unmotorized two wheelers.
Unmotorized two wheelers, exactly. Sorry, I cut you off. And
That's
then
fine.
I'll jump back in.
There's no. What do you call that? There's no. There's no manners on stream.
Yeah.
It's just make funnies and say things that are interesting or stupid. One or the other.
There you go. So yeah, basically what I was just saying was that the problem with fighting the two-wheeled lobby is that the people that are naturally against it, which I would say only 1% of people ride the two-wheelers, which in theory would mean 99% of people don't. I would say about 20% of that other 99% is somewhat like okay with the concept of two-wheelers like taking over their parking and their driving patterns and whatnot, but that still leaves a huge chunk of people, roughly 4 out of every 5, who in theory should be on the side that we stand on, but so many of those people are either just don't have time for it, which I understand, don't want to get involved in like the most boring thing ever, which is city politics. I understand that too.
Oh yeah.
And then the one that kills me, is when I see somebody that actually hears it, their alarm bells go off. They're like, this is ridiculous. How are they doing this? And it's usually somebody who's having something happen directly affecting them. Whereas I actually on my street don't have it, but I've noticed it like all over the city. They just do it piece by piece, and it's death by 1,000 cuts because nobody fights the ones that aren't in their area. And then a lot of times they have no idea that it's actually happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people typically don't. For one, they don't like the idea. Maybe I don't know. I think they're getting their good nature being taken advantage of, and I think a lot of people have bought the idea that bikes are good for your health and they're good for the environment and they relieve congestion and it's bikes or I'm sorry, unmotorized two wheelers, uh,
Yeah.
Public transit, all this stuff that they've just sort of, I don't know if it's programmed or they look at it as benign when I personally do not find any of this benign. Just my own take on it is these are slow incremental steps that are basically eroding, personal liberty and trying to group people in society into like literally into vehicles or movement that are either ineffectual, which would be the unmotorized two liters, or an easily controlled box, which would be like a bus or a train. And
exactly. Those are the very same boxes that now with this going on are canceling service, at least in our city, all over the place. So now all of a sudden you're left with three options. You can walk, you can take those two-wheelers, or you can use your vehicle, which is a personal four-wheeled motorized item.
We'll
And
call it an
guess
awesome
what?
sauce. We'll
I
call
do
it a
too.
war chariot.
That's right, baby. And only one of those three options allows you to make any sort of trip of a distance that is more than a few miles. So, I mean, unless you're, training for a certain tour in a certain European country known for giving up in war, that's really basically it yet again proves that public transit, at the end of the day, while it does have some benefits, even in those times where we need it the most, it literally shuts down. And not to mention all the strikes that might happen,
Or the fact that
in
you're
normal
clustered in a
times.
box with, God knows who, carrying God knows what, cooping all over the place.
Exactly.
Like, ugh,
Exactly. So, I
like
mean,
some dirty communist.
there seem to be more of those, or actually, there seem to be a lot of those involved in the movement that we are fighting
No
against,
kidding.
which
Oh,
is
that's something I
no
like
surprise.
get on there too. In fact, it actually makes me think. On the other hand, too, I don't know if you've noticed this trend. Maybe some of you in chat have. Now that we have, looks like 4 people watching.
What's up,
The
family?
the I don't know if you've seen any new construction lately. Uh, especially like apartment buildings. And I've noticed okay, so like I said, I live in Columbus. We discussed that earlier while we were trying to get this fucking albatross off the ground.
Yep.
Um, I I drive for a living, right? I'm not a I go around and take stuff from A to B, and I have an awesome death machine to do it in. I have a freaking an old cop car basically, and so it's a big vehicle for what it is, and it's a powerful vehicle. It has really good brakes, and which is good, but for things like parking, stuff like that in a city, and I typically am around the university campus, which has also they've made that entire campus to be they actually call it a walking campus, to where basically like they actually specifically try and make it difficult for vehicles to maybe get to the interior of it. So like they'll have loading docks for some of the major facilities and things like that. Like they've got the stuff for so they can get trash in and out of there and stuff like that. But everybody
Sure.
who lives on that in that campus or in those dorms, and it's an OSU, right? So it's huge
Yeah.
fucking
Huge
university,
school.
and but all their students that live in dorms, everybody there, none of them can have a car because they don't have. Well, they probably don't have the space to park it, albeit they do build parking garages, and the
Well, to your
entire
point,
yeah, and the
to
entire campus is set up. And now, in fact, they've even made it to the point where there are entire dorm towers, and these are dorms that have I don't know, say quite about 10 stories, uh, probably holding a freaking 1,000 kids at least, and you actually can't drive up to the front door of it, like
yep.
just that kind of nonsense. And not to mention the university also runs a this is a real handy thing. They make parking very hard everywhere, right? So pretty much they don't have a lot of open street parking. It's either they got either a coin till there, which you don't see too much of those, or they're reserved spots, usually for cripples or what do you call it, staff of some kind. And because obviously the elites get to have their parking spots and their cars
Right.
and stuff like that because they're a member
The
of the
same.
party. Obviously, some people are
Yes.
more equal than others, and the what do you call it? Uh, oh, but they also run a towing company called Campus Park. They can issue you tickets that they can't actually enforce. They've issued one to me that I've basically wiped my ass with it, and But if they ever really caught me like sitting somewhere that I shouldn't be, they could put a boot on my car. But I tend to carry an
Bec-
extra battery, so I could just
because that would be your second ticket, or for some other
because I've
reason.
got one that's unpaid from like
Yeah.
4 years ago, but it's never happened. To be honest with you, I could just walk out and say, "Hey, I work for X people," and they'd be like, "Oh, well, never mind." So it's not really that big a deal, but theoretically, those things could happen. But it's funny that the university itself actually, on the one hand, they have control over the design. They actually have a development company called Campus Partners that typically do a lot of the real estate development. Red Feather, this is the Antique Bike Alliance of Washington. I'm assuming DC, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. They actually run a parking thing. So on the one hand, they make parking restrictive. On the other hand, they make money from giving out parking tickets. And so you got that going on. It's a nice little racket they got there because they get both sides of the fucking thing. But
Right.
anyway, go on. Actually, I
Um,
sidetracked that whole thing, so that makes it really hard for you to go on. I'm a terrible fucking
well, no,
interviewer.
I can loop that in. I mean, first of all, just because you brought up parking tickets, did you know that DC is just a reflection of all the other coastal cities, and it sounds like interior cities as well that are getting hosed. But our city collects twice as much fine revenue from parking and like moving violation tickets than any other city in America, which is just crazy. That we, a city of 700,000 people, and this is per capita. So let me backtrack on that. But raw dollars somehow per capita, we are getting twice as much as Chicago, which I think is number two. Um, I if it was a factor of 10% more, 20% more, that would still be annoying because we'd still be number one. But the fact that it's double, that's insane. But to your point about OSU, I mean, first of all, the closest campus to me, and it's not nearly population wise the same size, but Georgetown is the same thing. You can't get to the interior of the campus anymore. You used to be able to, but now like those areas where people actually do stuff, they've literally took the main parking lot, which kind of was a split between the university and the university hospital, and they've just chopped it down and the parking's gone, and they've forced homeowners in the communities on the perimeter of campus to like bear the burden of all this extra parking, which they can't. And that's one of the things that I fight against the most, is this idea that like the planning is an oxymoron. City planning, urban planning, the concept of that is an oxymoron when you talk about government's role in it, because they literally seem to do everything in their power to not plan for things. A thing I went to today, which it feels weird to be doing this in the midst of what's going on in the world, but there was this one project that I saw that had just gotten greenlit right before, I don't know, 10 days ago or something like that, where they're trying to put these things called advisory bike lanes in this one neighborhood.
Do they
And an
give you
advisor,
advice while you bike?
great question. No, what they do is they take a normal road 2 ways, right? It's got parking on each side, and then cars can come from the east or the west. And just for
But no north
shits,
south.
well, there's a north south
Oh,
on the side streets, but um, literally for like shits and giggles and for like pilot testing and all these buzzwords they use just to jam this garbage down our throats, they are going to take this normal road and strip away the 2-way version that exists and put one center lane that cars going east and west have to share. Okay. They will then add 2 bike lanes on the edges of that. And the advisory portion of it is basically that cars coming at the same time in opposite directions will have to take stock of the current situation of the block that they're on. If there's a biker in the bike lane, which there you and I both know hardly ever actually happens. But
Yeah.
um,
But when there
if there
is,
is, but when
oh
there
boy,
is,
that
they
party
have
gets
to,
started.
right, the cars have to like somehow
Yield.
figure out what's happening. And if somebody in front of them, that sort of makes sense. But when it's somebody behind them, then, you know, if they do anything, then all of a sudden the biker's pissed off that you're in the bike lane, even though that's now the new setup of this thing. Um, and so they're literally taking a car street and turning it into like this, literally like game of chicken for 5 blocks right near on the backside of the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol. And I specifically, despite like my desire not to, you know, to do social distancing, to not like, you know, have people annoyed that I'm out in the community doing this random thing when these things are happening in the world. This one case, I was like, I gotta go see if people in the neighborhood know about this and what they think about it. And literally everybody that I spoke to in that, I think it's a 6 block stretch that was in their yards, I talked to them from the sidewalk and I said, do you know about this? No one did except for one guy who admitted that he was a biker who also had a car, but he was more of a biker. Nobody knew about it. And
Traitors.
the people, right. And even he, along with everybody else, thought it was a stupid idea. Right.
Yeah,
Um,
because the actual goal of this is not to improve traffic or disprove congestion. It's to snarl these roads up and make them impossible. Because then it's supposed to, slowly influence you to get out of your car, essentially.
sure. And then, I mean, both you and I know that P.S. These government agencies exist to spend taxpayer money, and so
Yeah, so
every
if they can
time they
get a new
do one of these
project going,
things,
great.
exactly, then all their cronies, you know, get to make money off it. And then the beautiful thing is with one like this, which is supposedly like a test, inevitably it will fail. And guess what they get to do then? They
Call it
get
a
to get
success.
paid twice and rip it. Well, that either that or they get to get paid again to rip it out.
Yeah.
Um, and so the most interesting thing, and this ties back to your OSU thing, and then we can move on, was I thought you were going to go this route with OSU. A guy that I spoke with today lives in the middle of that 6 block corridor, and they had just last year put a Safeway supermarket with residential, kind of like a mixed use development.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to ripping out parking spaces to make that work already, that was 20 or 25 spaces that they took off just on that little L-shaped area. They lowered the developers' requirement for number of garage spots for people that were moving into this new building. And so what does that do? And I thought this is where you're going to go with it. It basically makes it so that even for new things that should be clean on the paper, like this is what we need to do to make sure that the people that live in this building don't make life harder for the people that already live here, they go out of their way to screw that up too. And then boom, all of a sudden now you have some joker that moves into this building, or the apartment above a Safeway in a year, brings his car to DC, doesn't want to pay for the parking or can't get a garage spot. So then he's adding to the problem in the neighborhood, a neighborhood that already has lost, a couple dozen spaces. And with this new stupid advisory bike lane, who knows how much more. So it's nonstop, and they hit it from all angles, and you can never, and because they do it little by little in every part of your city, whether it's mine or yours or SF, New York, Boston, whatever, at the end of the day, it's like, even if I made this my full-time job, even if I spent 80 hours a week just doing this for just DC, there's no way I could win, right? Eventually, I have to pick certain battles that are the most egregious and the stupid little ones that they do somewhere else. Until we get like a critical mass of people involved, there's no way that I'll be able to stop those. But the hope is that we can convince some people to join up, even though we're not making any money off of this. Nobody's going to profit even a dime.
No, you
And
got to get your
say like,
grift on.
That's right, baby. No, that's. I mean that's why I always know that I have the high road in this, right?
I don't know about
Because
that,
every single, I think I do, because every single other stakeholder in this, even property owners, right? Even people I talk to, when I take off my anti-bike hat, I'm obviously concerned that like property values go down when you put a bike lane in a neighborhood. Retail suffers. The lack of parking makes it less valuable to own that home or rent that home. And so everybody has a vested interest to like put a stop to this.
yeah, absolutely. Now, the thing I was actually going to bring up about, I got sidetracked, which you're going to notice that's a bit of a pattern with me, uh, is the okay. So, like I said, OSU does a lot of developing now. Just south of that is the Short North area, and then there's downtown, and they've, I mean, literally the entire strip from pretty much Nationwide Arena up until the University District is almost been ripped out. Oh, excuse me, rebuilt, and they've changed it around to where, I mean, they're putting in luxury apartments, right? But instead of having a place where typically you would have, they're doing a lot of parking garages, all right? So they'll have private parking garages that are underneath the building. But then they also put retail space in there, which this was the craziest thing. I took something to one of the outlying cable stores that kind of hop around. I don't know what you'd call it. It'd be like going to the Spectrum, I'm assuming, or
We have Comcast.
Comcast, right? So at a
Yeah.
Comcast store, right? So just picture this: they put a Comcast store in the this giant, it's probably about a 7-story building, and there's a parking garage under. And they have two parking garages that are both under the building. One of them's for retail parking, right? So I drive into this goddamn garage and get out, and then you can go behind the door. Now they have doors that allow access to the backs of these stores, and but they're locked, so you can't get in these stores that way, right? Somehow I walked around the entire garage. I didn't seem to see a place where I could get out of the actual garage and then walk around to rock around the entire building. Which, I mean, if you're going to put these types of things in there, then you need to have a public entrance in your back, because why would I, if I'm shopping there, why would I want to get out of the
Yeah.
car, walk out in the
To then,
rain,
well,
and
right.
like, well, you've taken the steps to put the stupid garage underneath the damn, under a roof. Like, take the next step a little bit more logically. But by and large, and even this is another thing about being put in little boxes. And all these new apartments that they make, they're not apartments like a townhome would be, or a condo would be, where you pull up, you got your two spots in front of it. You say just not even an urban spot, like say you got your street parking like you normally would, or whatever, like say just a condo complex, where
Right.
parking shouldn't be an issue at all. And now they do it, but the real kicker is the fact that you can't just walk up to somebody's door and from the outside. You've got to, you
You're
know,
parked on the same level as the doors, or you're below them.
no, you're on the same level, but you can't access them from the garage,
Yeah. So you still have to go out.
and there's no actual exit from the garage that you can see. Like, I actually ended up just calling the guy and having him come to the back door. But if I was a customer there to do retail, because it's retail parking, well, now
Yeah.
I've got to get out, try and find wherever this entrance is supposed to be. And I looked at it. There was an elevator. There was a, but none of the, you had to have a swipe card to use it. And somebody asked in chat. And so all that stuff, like, you basically have to kind of hope that you pick the right one and can find it, because there's no doors. It's all automatic garage chain doors, right? To come down and up, and just a stupid thing. But the idea, and what I really don't like about it, is the fact that you're basically just living in a very, very nice dorm room where, I mean, they're luxury apartments, don't get me wrong. Some of these places are going for upwards of real estate, local real estate prices be hard to upwards of $1,000 a month for like a 2 bedroom, I'm sure. Uh,
Yeah.
and
That would be a good price here, I'll tell you that.
yeah, yeah, Columbus is a very affordable place. Um, like, but I mean, yeah, makes me thank God that I live in a fucking nice suburb with a house and shit and fucking 2-car garage and 4 more spaces on top of that. But
Yeah, man. I mean, has nothing to do with the two-wheeled vehicles we were talking about
not at
before,
all.
but no, but I'm saying like I 1 year of my life lived in one of those type of things. I lived in Arlington like about almost 15 years ago in a thing where it was retail, there was like an Apple store and
Yeah,
a Pottery Barn and all that crap in there. And you shared the garage between the homeowners and the retail. And the way it worked was there was one way in and one way out. And um, I lived on the fourth floor. And if it happened to be either a super busy like retail time of year, or just all it took was one idiot like not moving or positioning their whatever, whether it was the car or the shopping cart or whatever, in a way that like screwed up everybody else. Like all of a sudden, I'm just trying to leave my house to go do something, and now it's like I'm having to add, I don't know, 15, sometimes not quite 30, but at least 15 minutes just to get out of the garage that I live in. After that 1 year, I was like, I can never live in a place like that again. It was too annoying.
no,
you
I'm
could, you
sure.
can't, you can't
But
game plan.
the idea that I'm trying to get across there is they're they're basically your say whatever your apartment building is, they're all private entrances, which means the parking for those, even the ones that don't have retail space built into them, you're meant to park on the street somehow.
Yeah,
And whereas like a normal apartment complex, they typically have some visitor parking or there's just a bunch of space and it's just open air. And the these places, you have a private parking garage, you have a security at the door. So I mean, you live there. There's no getting out the back window if they're coming for you. Like it's basically a glorified dormitory,
yeah.
and that charges you a lot, and that's it. Some and the funny thing about some of this retail space is I don't know if you're familiar with United Dairy Farmers. It's basically a gas station, right?
No,
But gas
okay. I
station
don't know that.
convenience store, and
Okay,
it doesn't matter. It's called a Speedway. Called I don't know what you got in Washington,
sure.
but so they put one of these goddamn things in one of these buildings. There's no gas pumps. There's like 4 parking spots around the back that nobody who driving by would ever figure out that they're there. And you have 6 stories of stupid people living above it. And so I took something to that building once where that was. Now, next to the store is this, public thing you can walk into. Then there's an elevator that you got to use a swipe card to get up to the apartments and everything. I walk in there. Man, this is nice public space where a couple of homeless people can sit there and sleep. And like, I'm
Jesus.
so glad that I couldn't imagine paying that much to live in an apartment somewhere, not being able to park there for any sort of convenient way, and then have to deal with
Right.
that kind of bullshit. Uh, Way off the 2 wheel thing all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I got to steer that back. Steer it
No,
back.
that's okay. I mean,
Uh, the idea, the idea that I think I'm trying to get across here is when it comes to bikes in the modern era, or I'm sorry, unmotorized 2 wheel vehicles, uh, those buildings, urban planning, the oxymoronic as it might be, uh, everything seems to be gearing towards you're getting put in a box, you're going to do this, you have to be dependent, you cannot own things. That's another thing I noticed. Nobody owns anything. Whether it's your God, they have unmotorized 2 wheel vehicle shares now, where
yep.
they take a place. And they do this with public transit too. They take a place that would be a perfectly good spot to have some just parking, right?
Yep.
And just a place to park on the street. It's wide enough. Uh, and then they put in a kiosk that has a bunch of
Yeah.
stupid unmotorized 2 wheel vehicles sitting there that nobody rides. And then you got a bus stop that's fairly even somewhat more people use, but I don't know how many times that I've been told that these things are supposed to remove congestion, but I'm stuck behind it because you have a 2 lane road. The stop is right there, and the bus stops in the middle of the road. So now,
Right.
unless you,
Is it also illegal in Columbus to make a right around that bus too, like it is here? So you
they
have to
never
wait for
stop
it
on
to
the
go.
right, or they never stop on the left side of the thing. So that's not really a thing. They're always the stops themselves are always to the right. Sometimes they have little pull off places.
Right,
Um,
right. But they're always here. At least it the bus stop will be at the end of a block on the right side, right?
yeah,
But let's say you wanted to make a right on that street past where the bus stop is,
yeah.
you have to wait, and this causes traffic because even though that bus will now take 15, 30 seconds, a minute if somebody slows getting up, you can't go around the bus and make the turn even with the green light because that's a ticket. I don't know if you have that there.
I don't know. I should really find out because I do that all the time. Uh, it doesn't seem to be because I always read what the bus is doing because when they stop, they
Yeah,
got both things going. When they're getting ready to
yeah, they
move,
drop down. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
and uh, and I mean literally, I do that probably about 15 times a day. And even when they just stop, the real problem with that is they stop in the middle of the road. If you're behind the stupid thing and you've got traffic coming, on your left side as well,
Yeah.
well, unless you get somebody who's really nice, which honestly they're not really being that nice, because if they got to slow down to let you go through, they're slowing down everybody behind them.
Sure.
And
You're waiting
it,
for and you're the
yeah,
last one to go if you're behind the
right. And
bus.
essentially that's what it comes down to. And I think what is funny is I don't know if you're familiar with Top Gear. The old UK
I'm
show had Jeremy Clarkson and
yeah.
stuff.
I don't watch it, but I know that Matt LeBlanc took it over, and that was a bad idea. But
It was a
continue.
very bad idea. It was so bad. I stopped watching it after that point. All over a steak. Uh,
Unbelievable.
the the goddamn anyway, he one of the things that Jeremy Clarkson had said once was that all the traffic, all the things that these people try and do to make traffic better, just result in more of it or more frustration in driving. And that's kind of the angle that I come at with the bicycle thing as well, is the fact that everything everything that they try, everything that is tried tends to just make regular driving more annoying. And I I mean I understand it, but I don't understand it. I don't understand why anybody would want to do that. It just doesn't make sense to me. You've got on the one hand, you've got bicycles, which is a god damn it, unmotorized two-wheel vehicles.
I
Uh
forgot for a second there too.
yeah. You've got a 20, what is the top speed of one of those things? 15, 20 miles an hour, you know? And it's
Yeah.
not like everybody who rides one of those things is fucking Lance Armstrong all hopped up on the juicers and lighter because of one testicle. Uh, the, you know, and you've got those slow vehicles, which a typical minimum speed through a city for a vehicle is about 25. So you're already going 10 miles over at the slowest. I mean, my car almost idles at 25 miles per hour.
Yeah,
The
and that doesn't. I mean, DC has a fair number of hills once you get out of downtown.
Yeah,
I mean, I live a few blocks from a fairly major artery road that if you're coming up the hill and there's a bike there, which they're allowed to do, I mean, they should just on super major artery roads. I don't know how that's allowed, but anyway,
it's
yeah. I mean,
everything but a freeway, basically.
pretty much, yeah. And so, like, these non Lance Armstrongs of the world, I would be surprised if they're doing 5 miles an hour up the hill, and yet all of a sudden you're coming around a slight bend, and then boom, there's one there. And at night, if they're not wearing the proper gear, if they don't have lights on their bike, then all of a sudden, it's a problem, and it's so stupid. And again, nobody says anything. Nobody points out that in DC, for instance, streets are ordered alphabetically and numerically in the core portion of the city. If there has been a bike lane that is not like bustling with bike traffic on 15th Street for years, why in the world would they then add one on 14th Street? And then why in the world are they now trying to add bus lanes on 16th, which allow bikes to also ride in that? Like, if you want to add the bus lanes,
Now, if we could
fine.
get those two things colliding more often, it might just solve itself.
Yeah, and again, I'm using that word that's going to get us kicked off the
Yeah.
server, but
I
it's just
I
it's so
think we're cool
frustrating.
now. The bot seems to have calmed down.
It ignored us. Yeah, but it's like, I mean, you don't need to be a rock. You don't even need to be, a second grader to know that if you have something on 15th Street that is not really getting used, how in the world are you keeping your job by not only putting one on 14th Street, but also ripping apart half of the car lanes on 14th Street? It's crazy. And 14th Street is a major road in DC, by the way. It's just, ugh. So these are the things that no week has gone by since I started this last May where it seemed like there was like a bit where they were relaxing, even in the midst of what's going on right now. I know you've seen my Twitter the last week or so. These
I follow it
jokers
very
are,
fucking hard because you're the actually
yeah,
first person that I've ever met outside of myself that can see a lot of this for what it is. The people I know, like in real life, when I be like, "Oh god damn it, they're doing it,"
yeah, they
and
get all pissed.
yeah, they're like, "What's your problem with those? It gets rid of the traffic. It's less cars on the road, and it's better for the
Right.
environment, and all this other stuff that I don't really care about." I've never had really too much problems with other cars on the road, unless they're doing something stupid. But I can yell at them. Fine, we're all good. And if they do
Yeah.
something really stupid and it hits me, guess what? They have insurance typically, and if they don't, then they're really
and
screwed.
there's a buffer called the 2,000 pounds that the bikes hate. So
Yeah,
it's it's just it kills me. And anytime you call them out, whether it's your friends, people that are straight up enemies in this war, that, I mean, I hate to use all the military talk with this because I feel like
it's a bit
uh
hyperbolic.
was it Kellen was
Can't go to
Kellen
war
Winslow
over
on
traffic.
was Kellen Winslow on the Browns when he said I'm a soldier, or was he on a different team?
I don't know.
Are you a
I don't
football?
even know
Okay.
who that is.
Okay. He was a tight end that was like
He
a first
probably
round
lost a
draft pick.
lot
Yeah.
if he was on the Browns. I
Yeah.
know that much.
Well, anyway, so I try not to go too much into the war category with this, but it's so annoying because if you call them out, if they're like, "Oh, don't you care about the Earth? Like the Earth is going to die in 10 years if we don't start moving off of cars and go to things like bikes," and then you point out to them, at least in DC, hey, you know what they're doing right now in DC? They're paving over nature, right, to add a third bike lane parallel to two other bike lanes. For what reason, I don't know, but can you please explain to me why we need to take a completely tree, stick, and grass lined path and pave it so that you have a third option to get from point A to point B? And then immediately the response is, well, yeah, I don't know if they should do that, but what about this, that, and the other? And it's like you can never, ever, just like they have a million projects going on at a time and you might be able to stop one or two, it's the same thing with their arguments. If you ever actually confront them on their bullshit reasons why they think they need these things, then they just pivot to the next thing. And then when you go to that, then it's the obviously you're stupid, you're biased, you're some sort of like in DC. Now, I'm not a Republican. I'm literally independent, but like
Really? Get the fuck out
yeah,
of here.
but my point is, in DC, Republican is like probably the worst thing you can call someone because our city is like 90% Democratic. And they'll be like, "Oh, you're just some Republican asshole that just wants to drive your car and kill the earth." And it's like, didn't we just talk about this thing with the paving of of
Yeah,
nature?
there's no
It
sense in.
doesn't matter.
I
It's
mean, I'm
crazy.
not gonna pull any punches on that kind of stuff. I've noticed that, around here we've got the best example I can think of. Actually, I can think about like four. I'll try and run through those really fast.
Yeah.
We've got a one-way street that goes south called Summit. We've got a one-way street that goes north called North Fourth. They're parallel to each other, right? And So they put one in. They put a bike or a two-wheeled vehicle. They put a special needs lane uh, all the way down. It's kind of a silly way to go about it, but they took a 3-lane road that had parking on both sides, one way, so it was whatever, and then they just made it basically a 2-lane with parking on both sides again, but then there's another space. They didn't have to actually change, or they didn't have to tear up any grass for this, but they made the problem I think with the special needs lanes is the fact that all along this road that you go down at every intersection you have essentially traffic that wants to turn right and you have traffic that wants to go straight. And a lot of times the traffic that wants to go straight doesn't know that the traffic is going to go right because they're typically riding parallel or in the process of being parallel as they're getting past. um so basically somebody just makes a right turn and all of a sudden you got this moron flying over your hood or across your roof or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
so then they had to go and put in special turning lights. So now they got a special light for the special people, and then they have a special turning arrow for the drivers, and so that's
Did
fun. And
they
that's
also protect the lane or no? Did they also put those like
they didn't
pylons or
No, they
none of that?
protect the lane with the parked cars, which is
Yeah.
pretty smart, really.
Okay.
That's a little smart, I think. And that actually has kind of worked out because if you do need to park in one of those places, all you got to do is find one of the access points and just drive on the bike lane and just stop there and throw your hazards on. And it annoys the hell out of them. And you're never typically there, at least in my experience. You're not there long enough to, really get any trouble out of it. So that's always a plus. Um, 'Cause tit for tat.
Again, you're a lucky man because as of February 29th, that is now a $150 ticket. If you get, they don't even need to give you the ticket anymore with this one. The parking person just need to get your license plate number. So even if you ran in, got in your car, and drove away before they even like got their pen out of their pocket or their stylus, you're still getting that ticket in the mail, and good luck in fighting it. And I don't know if you remember the month leading up to that, end of January, early February, I was literally asking the Department of Transportation, local council people, hey, what happens if I'm making a right through this bike lane? Hey, what happens if I'm trying to parallel park in a spot that is, because in a lot of cases, it's the opposite of what you're talking about. The curb, the car, the bike lane, and then the traffic lane. And
And a
never get a
sidewalk.
response.
Don't forget a
And a
sidewalk.
sidewalk. And a sidewalk. And yeah, so, like you never get a response, and I'm sure part of that is because I'm the anti-bike alliance, whatever. But I've seen other people ask those questions, and it's funny, those people never seem to have a response either on social media. But the second, like within an hour of some asshole on a two-wheeled vehicle like tweeting or Facebooking or whatevering something about like leaves in a bike lane in some random part of the city, within an hour, the Department of Public Works is there saying, "Oh, thanks for your request. We'll be over there as soon as
Thank you,
possible."
citizen.
Right? It's like unbelievable. Yeah, oh my god! Just it gets so frustrating, and I like to think that, and I don't know exactly how to categorize this, but I like to think that I don't have a short fuse and that helps me deal with a lot of this stuff. But at the same time, I'm often very expressive, whether it's
I
in the
certainly
home or
would
out
be.
on the street about like how fucking stupid it is that not only are they doing this shit, not only are they doing it under the cover of night in a lot of cases, like that instance that I told you about today, like nobody on the block knew that they were doing this thing, even though there's supposedly a 1 month uh, not conversation, like community input period. Um, who's going to give community input if they don't know about a thing? And P.S. The last time I tried to community input something, the site that they created for it did not actually let you submit. So then I reported that. They did not respond. One other bikey guy reported it that I saw. They did respond. So
Funny how that works.
yeah, it's just everything is just so broken. And, I guess that is the nature of government now that I'm no longer a bright-eyed 18-year-old who think that, you just need good people in there to make things happen. I mean, the fact that these people are allowed to keep their jobs year in, year out instead of like, I've contacted the Department of Ethics for Washington, D.C. Nothing ever gets done, even when you point out that the people working for the Department of Transportation literally, have not one, not two, but dozens, probably hundreds in certain cases, posts that very blatantly show that they hate cars. How can you work for an agency that hates cars, or that is supposed to make life easier for drivers if you hate cars? It's
If that was
unbelievable.
true, I mean, no, I actually, you're saying the guy that works for ODOT or not ODOT, but I guess it'd be W
It's
dot.
D dot.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Uh, he hates the cars, does he?
He, I am saying that, and if you go to the hashtag get to know your DOT, which is mostly DC people, but I've thrown a couple other doozies in there as well. You can just, I mean, it's literally a laundry list of people that work for this city that get paid to supposedly make our roads better. That literally, when they're on the job, but definitely when they're not on the job, like to comment or retweet or like amplify some message about how cars are the devil and bikes are our new Lord and Savior. It's crazy.
Yeah, we have a paper around here called the Free Press, and we've got another one, which is just a rag that a bunch of socialists put out, and they're all like Bernie types, Democratic, so DSA types, and
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
but there's also another one that they actually went under. And I used to read a lot of stuff out of there when I first started doing the streaming because they they have their perspective as a bunch of college graduated journalist students, if you can imagine, and
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the
They've
people
been
they would
they've been
have.
trained.
Yeah. And one of the people they would have in their column all the time was a guy who ran this thing. He was one of these guys who's like, I'm a science tech writer guy. And I can't remember what foundation. It was something like the Scioto bike trail thing, which I don't really care. On a bike trail, that makes sense because it's not a fucking road that I'm driving on. You know what I
I
mean?
100% agree with you. Like, go crazy with that as long as it's not fucking with my shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I believe in tiered and separate things. Like if they wanted to put their two-wheel vehicle lanes like above or below in a tunnel, which would be kind of sweet because you could probably make them in circles and you could like go upside down and do tricks.
Yeah.
Um,
Like a Hot Wheels track.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if that's what they wanted to do, fine. Like and to pay for that, we can maybe segue into the other thing that you tend to talk about is licensing and in registration for
Yep.
those vehicles because they like I said, if they want to use these public streets, then obviously they should have to follow the same sorts of nonsense that anybody driving any other kind of vehicle typically does.
Exactly. And if so many people ride bikes, then, there should be plenty of money for, just a small fee, like call it even 25, $50 a year. I
Oh,
mean,
once
obviously you
once
and I,
the if they ever got a tipping point to where 51% of people who travel themselves were taking a two-wheeled unmotorized vehicle, they would immediately put licensing and registration on those and start regulating them up the wazoo because for one they'd have to replace the income to pay for the bureaucracies that handle vehicles, and for two they get to
right.
legislate a whole bunch of new laws, and that's always fun for people.
Yeah.
So
But thankfully we know that will never happen because literally there's
because
about
they're useless as
7,000 people
vehicles, which is the
in
problem.
my city that ride them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So let's talk about some of the things that actual riders do that really gets under people's skin. that I think is beyond the pale of the all the government nonsense and local politics. I will bring up something that I think I talked about on Twitter earlier today, and it's called filtering.
Yeah, I didn't know that term. Is that, are you pretty sure on that one?
I think so, if I remember it correctly. Um, I can't remember where I heard it though. That's a real bitch. Anyhow, so you're all stopped at a light, and you know Mr. Two Wheeled Unmotorized Vehicle comes up behind you. Doesn't stop behind you like he's another vehicle on the road. Instead, he either goes on the side by the curb or up through the middle if it happens to be a 2 lane road,
Hmm.
and stops even with you. So now he's made your 2 lane road a 3 lane road, and he's just got a skinny vehicle, right?
Yep.
And that way, say you've got more than 2 or 3 car lengths, 2 or 3 cars in a line all waiting. Now everybody who passed him on the way to that light gets to pass him again, and uh, and that's fun for
Bonus
everybody.
round. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bonus round, and it's I think it's one of those things where the New York guys, like the taxi guys there, I think that's why a lot of times they started pulling up and just seeing if they saw a guy coming, they would just open their car door and just like
Yeah.
give him the old
I mean,
give him the old driver's side surprise.
it's
And
kind of like when you're on a highway and some ass tries to come up the on ramp like way too far. You got to do that with these guys sometimes.
yeah, essentially. And so there's that. Um, anything
But
on?
yeah, far worse than that for me as a driver and for me as a witness to this stuff now is when they don't actually get in front of you or to the side of you, but that they feel that it's totally normal when the light turns green to start trying to pass you in the same lane as you're trying to make a turn. So I'm trying to make a right turn, like you said. One instance, they're coming up the right side of your car because we're in America. You make that right turn, you're gonna, I believe it's called right hook that person, and somehow it's your fault according to them, which any like alien arbiter would be like you're an idiot.
Yeah, that's
But
well, totally. For one, they're rear-ending you technically
exactly,
because
but
they're
they don't
hitting
see
a
it that
vehicle
way.
that's in front of them.
Yep. And the car can have its right turn light, signal on. The bike cannot have even passed the back bumper of the car before it started moving. And I early on when I did this, I caught somebody doing it in DuPont Circle, which is a fairly heavily trafficked area of DC. Uh, a guy on a bike, I believe it's 4 lanes in the circle all the way around. And there's a bunch of chutes to get off of it. And one of the major chutes, a truck had its turn signal on. I want to say it was like a beer truck or some sort of like fairly large delivery truck. Had
Yeah,
its turn
box truck.
signal on. Yeah, box truck, exactly. I don't think it was a refrigerator. Well, maybe it was. But anyway, making the right, and this dude comes from behind, and I catch it on video because I was literally walking and saw it happening. And a lot of times I just as soon as I see a biker that obviously looks like he's an asshole, I pull my phone out of my pocket and I try and get my phone to not hiccup when I'm trying to switch to video real quick. And I definitely caught this dude like doing this, and I posted it. And that was one of the handful of times. I mean, it doesn't really happen that often, and because I guess I blocked a bunch of like the worst offenders of this. But the bike mafia came out and tried to ratio my account by just posting on how the truck was the idiot for not looking for the biker as it was making the turn. And it's like, come
That's
on,
not a thing.
I mean,
As someone
at the
who,
end of the day, he's going to get hit, he's going to die, or he's going to end up in a hospital. And you can pretend that he was in the right, which any normal person would be like, that's totally not true. But even if you want to pretend he's in the right, at the end of the day, he's in the wrong because he is super injured for no reason other than him being an ass that couldn't like wait for the car to or for the truck to make the turn. It's crazy.
yeah, that
I
one's
keep
stupid. That actually happened to me. He never hit me, but Jimmy John's, I really don't understand. Motherfucker, don't bring me a sub on a bicycle. I'm gonna laugh at you. Like,
Yeah.
it ain't cool, dude. In your stupid little fucking jersey. Uh,
They've basically gone out of business here, so I wonder if that's
I
starting to be a
I
thing.
I don't see as many as I used to. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
Do you have Jersey Mike's there? Is that in
yeah,
Ohio?
I actually
Those are
years and
pretty good.
years ago I interviewed to go and work there, and the owner, well, they she owned like several stores, and goddamn, she asked me how many times if I thought I could slice the right amount of fucking ham for a sandwich. Probably about 6 fucking times, and eventually, because I had just left a job where I was like a general manager, right? Oh, I got shit canned for
Okay.
some political stuff, but I wouldn't call it political stuff, I guess. But anyway, so he gets shit canned from this job, and it's a funny story, but that's for a different stream. Um, the so I'm out there trying to get a new gig going, and I'm working, and I fucking go and interview for this broad. And like I said, she asked me about 6 times if I thought I could, follow basic directions, which is what she was asking me. And I'm just like, look, I can do that, but I can't deal with this. Like, I've told you my answer once. That's going to be enough. I'm like, I'm cool. I just left. I was like, you know what, that's dumb.
Yes.
And I ended up going and working for a fucking one of those used video game places, fucking for like 2 years. That was a fucking stupid ass job too, but certainly better than that. Jersey Mike's. Uh,
Are you a fan of their food at least? It's pretty
I
good.
never tried them. I
Uh,
just I bet they're
After that,
very
I can
good at
see why.
fucking cutting the right amount of meat for a sandwich, though.
Yes, I'm always pleasantly surprised with the portions that I'm given.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any around here, but whatever.
Gotcha.
Uh, where was I going with that? See, I'm talking about these
Sorry.
tangents, man. Fucking, I'm terrible.
So yeah, so
Oh, the
I
other
was talking about
thing
the
I
truck and
remembered.
the bike.
Yeah, uh,
Yeah.
one of these Jimmy Johns motherfuckers, um, came riding on like literally like the rear quarter panel of my car. And like I said, I have a fairly big car. It's like a taxi cab size, old classic yellow cab looking thing, and except it's black and white. And I was going to the hospital, which was to take something there, and they've got it's all slow roads, like nobody's in a rush, and I go to turn into their parking corral, or I don't know, I guess it's the pickup drop off point, and my God, when I started turning, like I'm because okay, if you're a driver, you should probably understand that where your eyes typically are is wherever your vehicle is going, right?
Yeah.
So unless you're getting ready to like change a lane where you need to know if there's something there, by and large, like 80% of everything you're trying to figure out is what the front of your nose is going to be because everything else isn't really your problem. And so I'm turning, and by God, it was like he bounced off my car, but he never touched it. But he was like right there on my fucking rear quarter panel as I'm making this right hand turn. We're going to the same place, bro. Like you could have just like nothing would prevent him from riding on the sidewalk anyway. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I'm just like I just assumed that he really wanted to die. Another thing, strangely enough, the same
Did he
area.
start yelling at you or no?
No, and he
Okay.
would have been wise not to. Like he just pulled up, acted like there was, he didn't say or do, or I didn't say or do, because it all happened so fast. But I'm just looking at it like, look, you really gambling there, riding this vehicle like that,
Yeah.
especially with a 2 or 3 thousand pound freaking Ford Steel that you could be easily going over, And strangely enough, the other road there's a one way called West 10th. Um, that's the other thing I think I brought up the other day on Twitter is the one way street, cars on both sides, pouring down rain, dude riding one of these things, no lights at night, dressed in black. Like, I mean, you're
Yep.
going the wrong way on a one way, and I'm like, bro, there's another street just up the road from you that is the direction you are actually going.
Yeah.
That would make more sense. And what kills me, I like, I don't know. I just can't stand. I can't stand it in the summertime. You get a lot of you got a lot of those dudes pushing those beach cruisers to the max. Um, Not actual proper like road bikes, but like kid bikes and shit. But they're adults riding them.
Yep.
They look like BMXs. Uh, just all that kind of nonsense. And just I don't know. Even almost worse are those electric scooters that they put out.
Uh,
Those little bird scooters.
how bad is that in your city? It's pretty bad here.
Uh, they're they were really bad when they first put them out, and now honestly, what I hate about them is the fact that they just leave the stupid things all over the place. Like they're litter. I mean, you're leaving giant lithium ion batteries everywhere. I don't think that's a very
Yeah.
bright thing to do. Part of me has actually just wanted to go take them and just toss them in the dumpsters because it's not like they don't have like a video camera on the thing. They don't have any way of knowing. Like all they know is if that thing moves. They don't know who moves it. They don't know if they're just getting it out of the way or what's going on with it. You toss those things in a dumpster. If they don't get them before the truck does, those that's just being
They're gone.
compacted. You know what I mean? They're gone.
Yeah.
And I can't
Yeah.
imagine those things are cheap. And I can't imagine that the companies that run those things are going to be around forever either.
No, I think I mean, maybe one or two survives. I don't know. But the problem is with those things is they're heavier than they look, right? And I think part of that was on purpose so that they didn't get stolen or
Yeah.
moved so easily. But
Well, I can
like,
pick one up one-handed, so it's not a big deal. But
all right, I'm a little weaker than you, then. But no, I've thought about grabbing my wheelbarrow and just rolling down the street and tossing like 5 of them in, then finding a nearby like cemetery or
yeah,
you
just
know
burying them.
untrafficked woods and just dropping them there, and they would eventually find them. But
Oh yeah,
at
they
least
got
it just
GPS on
clears
them.
it up. Honestly, those things are lower on my list these days because I don't know if you have these things in Columbus, but they have full-on moped scooters for rent here that
Yeah,
they
they've got
they
those. That's the two-wheel semi-motorized vehicle share.
yeah, and with I don't know if they do it there, but they force those people to leave those in street parking. Like there are plenty of easy access tree boxes that those things could fit in because that's where people that actually own those, the few that do, put them there. But yet somehow these city rental share ones have to take away parking. They're often just like in the way. Those things kill me. And then number two on the list, even though you'd think it'd be number one, are the rental bikes because or the two-wheeled
Mm.
bike shares
I think we're
or
safe
whatever.
now.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think we're safe
too
now.
hard
It
to do.
hasn't.
But that are the undocked ones because it's doing that exact same thing that you're talking about with the scooters, except an undocked bike is 2 to 3 times as big in terms of sidewalk killing
Yeah,
as a scooter is. So
I'm
it's
not even a
just
huge fan of pedestrians to be honest with you, but at least they've most of the time they have the good sense to hey, there's a big heavy vehicle coming, they'll get out of the way. Like
yeah.
for some reason you put them on two wheels and they think it's like, oh, it's my right, I'm helping the environment or some shit, and I don't
It's
understand
funny.
it.
I've always felt going back decades, I can always remember myself being the pedestrian that if there's a stop sign or whatever, I'm like the guy that waves the car through, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm like,
you want them out of
if
your
I was
way.
right, and also I think ever since I turned 16, that's when you get your license, California. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, you know, I thought to myself, if I was in the car, why the hell would I want to wait for this asshole across the street? So in my head, it's like easy math. Yeah, pedestrian, be nice. Because if it was the reverse, I would want this guy to let me go instead of having to wait for him to cross. So, yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough. And
well,
that's
I can't.
why,
Like the only
oh,
place
sorry.
that that's not a thing is actual the campus because they've got the walking campus and they have the right of way. But there's nothing metering. That's the real problem that they have. It's such a small problem by and large, and it's so localized to that area. It's not really an issue for me. But when you're trying to drive down the street and they've got a place where it's like yield to pedestrians, and there's literally like a zombie horde going both ways across the stupid road, and none of them stop, And they don't even
Yeah.
look. I'm just
Yeah.
like, bro, like you guys got you kids. Listen, kids, I'm going to give you some advice. All right,
Yeah.
you got a guy sitting there long enough to where you've seen 30 people walk, and they've been there for 10 minutes, and there's still 30. Just stop, put your hands out like you're doing your little no square thing, and just let that car go. Like,
Yeah. There's one, George Washington University has one spot in, I mean, it's definitely not a closed campus. There's a lot of like car traffic that goes through that campus, but there's one intersection in particular where if you are in your car and it's like whatever the times that are kind of start times for classes, whether it's like 1, 3, 11, if you're there then and you try and get through that stupid intersection, it is so annoying. Just like a constant stream of pedestrians.
yeah, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
minor annoyance. Certainly hasn't been a problem lately. I can tell you that, man.
Yeah. It's true, man. I
Yeah,
just made
I'm
that drive
so
today.
glad that I've been able to spend an hour and a half talking to something that isn't that, because I'm so sick of using. I'm not even going to try and say it because like they're real sensitive about it for the moment for some reason. But
Yeah.
you get that woo flu out there. Like I don't want to actually use the proper word. I think the others probably makes more sense to get around the bot. Um, but like God, man, oh, so tired of it. Oh, they're gonna do this next, and they're gonna do that next. And goddamn, I don't care. Like we've
It's
got plenty of
well,
toilet paper.
at some point we will care, but hopefully we don't reach that.
I don't
Um,
care.
uh,
I said what I said.
yeah. What was I just gonna say to you? Yeah, no, I mean, part of this last 2 weeks, the calculus of even posting about the thing that I post about, and yeah, I only spend an hour a day ish, like dealing with it, but like I kind of feel like an ass sometimes that I'm not like pivoting or slowing down or like doing raw like posts about that thing you were just talking about with some of my posts, but it's like to your point, I think there needs to be some normalcy, and especially since these people that we're up against are continuing their
Well, they're certainly not going to stop
siege.
for case of that. In
Right.
fact,
Yeah.
I would not doubt that in those circles they're probably writing articles now saying that, hey, you want to make sure your lung capacity is really good and keep your breather going well, you need to go
Yep.
out here and fucking get on one of these two-wheel motorized vehicles, and somehow they'll tie the one into the other to make it seem like these stupid clickbait articles you see where it's like,
Totally.
and I guarantee they're being written like right now. It'd be like, well, doctor says or whatever. You get out there and get that good aerobic exercise, help keep the virus out of you. Like, all right,
And they'll cite some study that was written by a guy that is one of them, and
yeah, yeah. Which
that
a lot of
happens.
the time they legitimately are. I mean, a lot of these, it's a trifecta of nonsense because you've got people that don't like. You got health nuts essentially. You've got, I guess, urban planners or politicians that get together. Then you've got environmentalists, which a lot of times are very interlinked with the health nuts too, and people very, very, very concerned, but probably not correct about making everything really nice. Making
Yeah.
everything as good as it can possibly be because they're searching for utopia, and I think that's probably what maybe the underlying premise of a lot of that. A lot of those people that are really into that, and I think the hardcore, the zealots, and then everybody else just like, well, a lot of the unsuspecting public at large kind of look at it like, yeah, well, I don't know. I just,
Everybody deserves a chance or
yeah,
whatever.
it's
Yeah.
more, I think it's more along the lines of, well, they're trying to do good and they just don't really want to be, I don't think they're going to think about it critically long enough to really make any kind of real decision about it. And most they'll do is they'll gripe about it when they're behind one in a car or, but I don't think they're not going to see the greater threads to draw it all together. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like I've been saying, not just it's not just the unmotorized two-wheel vehicles. It's it's real estate. It's construction, how things are constructed. It's all the things that are whatever sort of, I don't know. This is the one I can't figure out a word for. Is
Well,
It's close to zeitgeist, but it has direction. You know what I mean? It's like the difference between speed and velocity, but it's more
yeah,
about zeitgeist, but with direction.
it's like the agenda, and
Yeah, it's the
that's
agenda, exactly. The agenda.
yeah, and it's all of a sudden you're some sort of conspiracist when you talk about it, but I mean, eventually you put data points together on a map, and anybody that is being honest should be unable to refute the fact that not all of these things could be happening simultaneously or within the same calendar year, if it would, especially when they're happening in every city simultaneously.
Yeah, what is it? They're using the
That
chemtrails to make the frogs gay, so they make them ride
right,
bicycles.
yeah. I mean, these aren't like huge leaps where I'm trying to like pretend that there's like lizard people in charge of the world. Like, this is very plain and simple. Like, it's very weird that the city of Portland is trying to do the exact same thing as the city of DC on some new like pilot project for bike stuff. And it's
Yeah,
like,
and they're
yes,
doing this.
both of
It's
those.
not even just those two. It's probably my city as well. I obviously I'm not the kind of guy that's going to a city council meeting anytime soon. I don't have time for it. For
Yeah, yeah.
and if I
If you
did,
have
it'd
two
probably
jobs, yeah.
end in a fucking news story and a little jail sentence of about 30 days. Uh, because
I went into one council member's office. It's a guy. Well, I went into a bunch, but I went into one where I knew the guy was opposed to our point of view. And the only reason I even did it was because he had already announced that he was not running for re-election. And so I went in and I said, look, and of course, he's not going to come out and see me, but his like chief of staff type person
yeah,
talked to me. And I was like, look, I know how he's going to vote on this. I'm not trying to like really change his vote because he's already publicly said what he's going to do. But I would like, for, considering that he's stepping down and like, you know, he seems like, I said this, I don't actually believe this, but I said he seems like somebody who like, wants to get what's right done for our community, or however I phrased it. Could he at least mention that it was, I don't know if you remember, a couple weeks ago there's this thing in this where they're trying to put a bike lane, and I kind of partnered with the local churches because the churches were against this idea. And between the church, I mean, it was really the churches
yes,
who had
yeah.
the
They were basically
influence.
taking away all the parking for the nuns.
Yeah, and they tried to like, the city tried to pretend that they were suiting their needs when they really weren't, and the churches actually won because it's an actual block of
Grandma
people that
Parker really loves riding her fucking bike to goddamn Sunday mass.
exactly.
Like,
So anyway, so I was like, hey, the whole thing that the bike people are centering their argument on is this idea that like some guy just a few weeks ago got hit by a car and it's not safe. Well, guess what? I went, and for whatever reason, I'm the only person that actually pulled the police report. And the police report says that this guy caused his own accident by trying to make a left from a right lane into a car. Um, and I went to this guy's council member's office and I said, I would ask that this guy has the moral fiber, or however I put it, to at least put that in open testimony, even if he still plans on voting for the bike lane. And of course, I doubt that happened. I didn't go to the meeting, but because I too, have a life. But it's just it's nuts how these people that are elected or hired by RCs to like work on, you would think in a democracy, work on the behalf of the most people, or the people, things that would do the most good for people, are the exact people who have this agenda to do something that is the exact opposite of that.
yeah, it's a real fucking pain in the dick. And
Fucking hate it, dude.
I don't know. Like I said, I tried to keep. I'm starting to run out of steam and ideas. I
Yeah,
just
no,
heard
that's
something in the house. That was weird. There was a time. This is really funny. There was a time. One of the I used to play this background music. I had to stop because a lot of it was copyrighted by the Chinese, strangely enough, and it was some shamisen fucking thing, right? You know, the Japanese like like one of those, and
Okay.
but in the I don't know when they were recording the video, somebody must have disabled the alarm system to get in or out, and it sounded just like mine. So every time that song would play, I would think somebody was leaving the house. And it took me about 3 or 4 streams to figure out that that wasn't actually the case. Uh,
Yes.
maybe that's what it is. Maybe I don't know how many bikes are made in China. A lot.
Well, that might
Probably
be
a lot.
that might be proof that that China is trying to destroy our country right there.
I think it might be. They're certainly trying
Yeah.
to cause, less efficient traffic patterns.
Oh my god. Yeah, there's some commercial here. This I'll say it really quickly. There's some commercial here where there's a horn in the background of the commercial. It's not like really part of the commercial. And every single time that thing comes on, I'm like a cat where like my head's like, wait, what? Huh? And then 5 seconds later, I'm like, oh, it's a stupid ass commercial. But yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. It's good to talk about this stuff. I mean, I can't remember last time I've talked about it with anyone for this long because I know my family like gets sick of this stuff real fast.
You're like,
And
oh god damn it! I don't.
I th-
We'll just call you. We'll call you Addie. Or Abby. There we go. Be like fucking Abby just bitching about bikes again. Like just spent
yeah.
all dinner and Thanksgiving just so mad that fucking cousin Eddie came over here on a fucking 2 wheel. Like, like oh shit.
I don't know.
If let's say that I found one of these limp pickard people that would want to try and set up maybe some kind of they would want to try and argue their case for their bicycle. How would you feel about debating them here?
I mean, I'm not afraid of debating. There'd probably be a fair amount of repetition. If anybody were listening to this, they'd probably hear a lot of the same points being made. So
No, I'm
it wouldn't
sure, but
be
that doesn't matter.
that exciting.
There's not a three is not a lot of people,
Yeah, I hear you.
and conflict draws.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be intrigued. I'd probably, if I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't prepare for it because I feel like
Well, it
I
doesn't
would
matter
just,
if you're prepared. These aren't the
yeah,
halls of debate. It doesn't matter who's
yeah.
right. It matters who's funny.
There you go. Okay, so I got to get some better one-liners. All right.
You get them chops.
That's right, baby. I don't know why I keep saying, but yeah, I would do it. I mean, I don't think I would do it in the next like week or two,
No,
but
obviously
at
not.
some
I don't
point,
have anyone in mind, but Lord knows that I'm on Twitter quite a bit, and eventually one of these people are going to feel froggy. And I don't see anyone. No one shows up they're not going to show up in the YouTube chat and do that. But you never know. So I
yeah,
just
no, I mean
want to see how you
that's a
feel
good
about
like
doing
see
that
what they
sort of
do.
thing.
And I'll be honest. I mean, every time that I do something like this, it only helps me like for when I eventually probably have to stand in front of some, Washington D.C. community meeting where these jokers turn up in mass and the people on our side don't turn up because, again, like we
Well,
said,
they
they
have
don't have
lives
time
and
for it.
jobs to pay for their
Right.
gasoline and vehicles.
Right. So, I've done it once where I've been in a room where it wasn't full of these people. There was a fair number and they have no problem interrupting you when you're at the mic at the podium. And my heart kind of was beating through my chest, even though I walked in there armed with,
A gun?
the perfect, no,
Oh.
sorry, buddy, with the perfect trap to catch these DDoT guys, lying in front of an open testimony. So like I was all ready to go. I knew exactly how I was going to play it, and I still was like nervous because I'm not used to having to be like, I've been a member of debate type stuff in the past. It's not the debating that scares me. It's the fact that in a lot of these cases, it's me against a group, right? Just
Yeah,
like,
you're
if,
always gonna. I just assume that anytime I argue with anything, I'm gonna be outnumbered, which I don't
yeah.
often do. Like, I'm not really one to get, you know. I can think of another show that was on YouTube that was all about debates and kind of a blood sport thing going on where people argue about shit and call each other names, right? And
Is that what Bloodsport is? You would mention that early on, and I
yeah,
didn't.
yeah, it was a thing where people kind of just it was sort of debate and it was sort of like pro wrestling in a way.
So it's like a rap battle, kind of, but with
No,
like,
no, it's not so
uh,
debased. Um, not that debased anyway. Yeah, yeah, it's more like they'll talk about a serious subject but end up just calling each other faggots.
okay,
you know, and
gotcha.
and that's kind of the way that goes. But it was very entertaining, very popular for a very short amount of time. It's still rather popular, but
What matters more in that? The content of your argument or how funny you are? Is it the funny
well,
again?
if you can do both, you're gonna slay. You know,
But if you have to pick only one, which one wins?
it'd be funnier
Okay,
just because that's more entertaining, and so you
that's what
can,
people are there for.
yeah, more or less. And not only that, typically, if you are actually that much, if you can get like 51% entertaining and like 49% an actual substantive argument, you've pretty much done fairly well. Let's face it, even in the halls of debate at you know where we're going to make logical points and oh, that's a fallacy and all that kind of stuff. Like, there you still end up running circles. I mean, yeah, how many times I've seen a capitalist debate a communist, and it's just one stupid endless loop because eventually, eventually it just either becomes semantics or they're arguing the same thing from different ideas, but calling the one thing a different thing and calling another thing, or they're using different terms for the same thing, that
Yeah,
sort of thing. I don't know. But
yeah,
the main point, and as for me, as a a gracious host, is to provide an entertaining or informative show. And
yeah.
usually I
No,
don't
this was
succeed at either one of these, but yeah,
this was fun for
you
sure.
you do it.
Maybe, the
And
only thing I would say is maybe, and not that this felt like. I mean, how long have we been doing it? Not that this felt like almost 2 hours, because it actually
oh, I'm
flew
dragging
by.
you.
No, no, no. But maybe you put like a time cap on it. Yeah, I'd be down for
Well,
sure.
usually I stop after 2 hours. I was gonna start wrapping it up here in a minute as far as this stream goes. The debate thing, whatever. Like I said, I don't have anybody booked for it or anything like that. And
Plus,
like I said,
you
you're
don't
the
you don't
first
really want to
guest.
fraternize with those people.
No, I don't. And to be quite honest, I don't, unless it's imprisoning them. Uh, but as a thing goes, it's just always good to be like, well, if this subject comes up, I've got a card in my pocket. You
Yeah,
know,
I hear you.
throw that out there. So then I
Cool.
got, now of course I would be a neutral party in that sense because I'd be moderating it. Say hello to Hell Evil Dead El Jefe. He's joined us here, and
What
he looks
what's up,
like,
buddy? How are you? The
yeah.
boss. I love it.
Well, let's see. So, quick summary for those of you watching: bicycles are bad for everyone. You should buy a car and grow up and stop tearing up roads, the perfectly good roads, to add another vehicle that doesn't make sense to have on those roads in the first place. I think that pretty much sums up, I think, would be my point of view and yours.
Yeah, if it was good enough for your great grandfather, your grandfather, your mom, it's good enough for you. Stop trying to like do stupid ass stuff with our cities
Yeah. And
and towns and rural roads and
yeah, rural
earth.
roads. Oh man. Yeah. If you get
I
a
was in a real quick story. I went had to go down to see my mom lives in Florida now, and my grandfather was sick. And so it was kind of one of those last minute air things where we booked it, and it just made more sense to fly into Orlando because it was so cheap, and then drive to where they were. And there's, if you get southeast of Orlando as you're trying to get to 95, um, to go, down the Atlantic coast, there is this whole stretch for like a solid probably 45 minutes where it's a 60, I think a 60-mile-per-hour road the whole way, and there's just a bike lane there, like for probably 75% of it. And I don't know, I didn't see a single bike when I was doing it. I saw one person walking.
I'd be terrified to fucking ride on that.
I mean, first of all, the gators alone, I wouldn't step foot out of a car in that state. But,
I remember I've driven to Florida a few times, and what always killed me is like we did it in. I remember as a kid doing it in 1989, right? And
okay.
I think I did it again a few years later, a couple times. Like I think it was about 96 ish. And what's weird to me is right before you get to Florida, when you're coming from Ohio, is there's this like 2 lane road, and it's like a country road, right? But it's it's
Are
a
you in
country road,
Alabama or Georgia? Where are
Georgia,
you? Okay.
and I think yeah, Georgia, yeah, it's
Okay.
Georgia. But right before you get to the damn line, where you can make a decision to either go into the Panhandle or like head towards Tallahassee or head towards
Yeah.
Orlando.
Yeah.
There's like it just kind of stops, and then there's like a you one of those you stop and you can only go 2 roads, and I don't know, that's always stuck with me as a kid. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
it was weird driving down there like years later. And I'm like, I remember every fucking thing. It was odd.
I was in I was in Minnesota. I was north of Minneapolis, and there was one of those roads right near the Mississippi River, like source up there, and it was that same like weird feeling where it's like, okay, this was like a major road that I was just on for a while, and now I think I'm supposed to go left because my GPS is telling me I should, but what happens if I go right? Where do I end up? Because
You'll go to a destination unknown.
Exactly.
I really wish I had that soundboard on right now. You don't get that reference, but I'm sure Hefe does if he's still watching. I'm going to show some channels to you while you're here, real quick, and then I think we'll probably end this show.
All right, cool.
You should check out Adonis Paul on the YouTubes. He does some. You,
Is he Jake Paul or Logan Paul related?
no, God, dude,
Thank
come
God,
on, man.
because they're from Ohio, right? I didn't know where you're
They
going with
are
that.
from Ohio. They're from Northern Ohio,
Yeah,
but
so
they're not Ohioan.
thank you for not repping them.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. No, Adonis Paul, different thing. Check that out. Check out Tom Pease sometime. I'm sure he would probably be into what you're into. He's more of a car guy. He talks about different stuff, but that'd be Pinoid News. I should link it in the
Yeah. When you send me the link for the whole thing, just pop that stuff in there somehow.
Yeah, I can do that real now. Actually, just there's that, and you haven't actually been able to see the stream, which is really funny. Um, so the thumbnail that they chose for that is another thing. Let me see if I can find what is this one at. I need to find one of his old videos and just link that shit. That way you can check them out, cause there's some wonderful fucking uh, everybody needs shit to watch,
Yeah, man.
and yeah,
I
I'll
can't
get
fall
to it
asleep
after
these
that.
days without that kind of stuff. So it's
Yeah,
good.
I almost can. Well, I certainly can, but I actually prefer a dark room. If I can find a coffin, that would be awesome to sleep.
That is not what I'm looking for.
You
Try to
don't
stay
know,
out
man.
of.
It's nice and cozy.
I
Nice and
don't know.
cozy.
I actually, when I die, I don't know if I want to go underground at all, man. Definitely not in a box. I feel like I just need to be thrown out for the animals to take care of me.
Oh, you don't want a sky burial, man. That's what that is.
Oh no! I mean, like
No,
somebody
like a sky
puts me
burial
in
is
a
where
trunk.
they throw you out in the woods and let the animals take you. That's an
Why is
Indian
that a
thing.
sky burial? Oh, I thought you were talking about like drop me out of
Cause
a plane or off a boat
no,
or something.
no, that's because the vultures eat you, and then
Okay.
they take you into the sky.
Ah,
It's
I don't know.
Tibetan.
Somehow it sounds better.
I don't think so, because you're just getting the sky in
Circle of
India,
life.
so you're just going to be poo. That's all it is. You're just going to fall right back down as poo.
Yeah, at least I'm not underground
Yeah.
or in a box.
All right. All right. Well, this has been fun. Very interesting. Hope you had a good time. Hope you had a good time in chat. Uh, this is Victor Rand. I'm going to sign off. This is the Anti-Washington Bike Alliance, or no, the Anti-Bike Alliance of Washington.
That's right.
Follow his Twitter at, what is your Twitter?
It's Adam Schaffer 15.
Oh, is that actually
because
your name?
that is my name, and that's what Twitter assigned me. That 15 means nothing to me, but that's what I got.
Well,
because I'm
because
not.
you used your real name like a fool. Like, you can go Anon, man. Like,
I mean, they're eventually gonna find me. So what the hell?
yeah. Well, no, you just do that for fun. That way you can say inappropriate things way longer.
Uh,
Anyway, I'll put those channels in the links if you want to check them out. Not a big deal. All right, this has been the Rando State for today. It was fun having a guest for once. That was great fun.
yeah, this was great, dude. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me. And
Oh, I would like to have you again. If you get new information or some other stuff going on, feel free to stop by, watch the show from time to time, whatever you want to do.
for real, dude, definitely. And
Yeah.
let's keep our DMing, and appreciate all the likes and retweets and comments. Those are always good too. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, did you see my suggestion for the name?
What was it? I
It's the
forget.
NAAAP. It's like the
Yeah.
NAACP, but
So,
National
so
Association for the Advancement of Automobile People.
I probably will steer clear of that because I'm trying to, appeal to everybody, but or everybody that doesn't ride those two-wheeled items. But yeah, I now that you mention it, I did see that.
I thought it was funny. That's why I did it.
I don't think I'm going to put it in my Twitter poll as one.
I didn't expect you to. That was good fun.